They say a house is just bricks and mortar. That's the first lie they tell you. A house is a witness. It has ears in the floorboards and eyes in the glass. It smells the fear in your sweat before you even realize you're afraid. It hears the heartbeat of a liar from 3 rooms away. I built this house to be the ultimate witness. I built it to be a mirror for the people who are too afraid to look at themselves. My name is Jade. To the world, I am a tragedy in silk, a wealthy widow living in a gothic brownstone, surrounded by technology that belongs in a science fiction movie. They see me walking through the garden, cutting roses with silver shears, and they think I am lonely. They have no idea. I am never alone. I have the secrets of 100 couples stored on my servers. The rain was lashing against the windows when the black SUV pulled up. I watched the monitors from the mirror room. Leo and Meyer, the golden couple. Leo stepped out first. He didn't check on his wife. He checked his watch. He was a trader, a man who lived by numbers, by leverage. Then came Meyer. She stepped out of the car like she was stepping into a cage. She was clutching a sketchbook to her chest as if it were a shield. I met them in the foyer. The lighting was dimmed to exactly 40%. I wanted to look like a mystery. "Welcome," I said. My voice was low, vibrating in the quiet of the large hall. "You're late, but in this house, the outside world doesn't matter. Time starts when I say it starts." Leo's eyes didn't go to my face. They followed the line of my emerald silk gown down to the floor. He didn't even try to hide the hunger. I've seen that look 1,000 times. It's the look of a man who thinks he can buy anything. "The rain was a nightmare," Leo said, his voice a deep, practiced baritone. "But I have to say, Jade, the photos didn't do this place justice. Or you." I smiled, but I didn't let the warmth reach my eyes. "The photos are a lie, Leo. Everything is a lie until you experience it for yourself. Let me show you to the penthouse. It's been waiting for you." As we rode the elevator, I stood between them. I could smell Leo's cologne, expensive, woody, aggressive. "The house is smart," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "It knows your heart rate. It even knows your mood. Right now, the elevator is glowing amber. Do you know why, Leo? Because amber is the color of desire. The house thinks you're wanting something you can't have." Leo stepped closer to me, his arm almost brushing mine. "Tell me." The sensors in the East Wing triggered. Leo was out of bed. I knew he wouldn't sleep. The house was too quiet for a man with a loud conscience. I met him in the kitchen. I wasn't wearing the emerald gown anymore. I was wearing a thin, black lace slip that left very little to the imagination. The kitchen was bathed in the cold, blue light of the smart fridge. Leo stopped in the doorway. He was shirtless, his gym-toned chest glistening in the moonlight. He looked at me, and I could hear his pulse speeding up through the hidden mics. "Couldn't sleep?" I asked, not turning around. I was pouring a glass of ice-cold water, letting the sound of the liquid fill the silence. "The air is too still," he said, walking toward me. He stopped right behind me. I could feel the heat radiating off his body. It was an intense magnetic pull. Or maybe it's just that I can't stop thinking about what you said in the elevator. About desire. "Desire is a dangerous thing in a house like this, Leo," I whispered, turning around slowly. The distance between us was less than an inch. I could see the sweat beads on his forehead. "Does Meyer know you're down here? Does she know you're looking at me like you want to tear this lace apart?" "Meyer is asleep," he growled, his hand moving to the back of my neck, his fingers tangling in my hair. "Meyer doesn't need to know everything. She's too fragile for the truth." "A man of secrets," I whispered, my hand sliding up his chest, feeling the hard, rhythmic beating of his heart. "I love secrets. They're so much more fun to break than hearts." Leo leaned in, his lips brushing against my ear. You're playing with fire, Jade. I am the fire, Leo, I replied. And you're just looking for a reason to get burned. Just then, the smart fridge made a loud, mechanical hum. Leo jumped slightly. The spell broken for a second. I smirked and stepped away, leaving him standing there, breathless and wanting. Go back to bed. Leo, your wife might wake up, and we wouldn't want her to see what a hero you really are. Not yet. Anyway. I went back to my mirror room and watched the playback. He stayed in the kitchen for 20 minutes after I left, staring at the spot where I had been standing. He was hooked, not just by my body, but by the thrill of doing something wrong. Men like Leo don't want peace. They want the chaos of a secret. The next morning, the sun didn't just rise, it invaded. It cut through the heavy velvet curtains of the brownstone like a golden blade. I was already awake, sitting in the blue glow of the mirror room, watching the data streams. Leo's sleep had been a battlefield. His heart rate had spiked 4 times between 3:00 a.m. and dawn. He was dreaming of the kitchen. He was dreaming of the lace. He was dreaming of a betrayal he hadn't fully committed to yet. Meyer, on the other hand, was a flat line. She was draped across her side of the bed like a discarded doll, exhausted by the weight of a marriage that was slowly suffocating her. I decided to change the scenery. A predator never strikes twice from the same bush. I invited Leo to the basement gym. It's a space of chrome, black glass, and neon blue light. I knew Leo was a fitness junkie. Man like him used their bodies as armor. They think if they are strong enough on the outside, the rot on the inside won't show. I was already there when he walked in. I was wearing high-compression leggings and a cropped top, my hair tied back in a sharp, high ponytail. I was working the heavy bag, my strikes rhythmic and loud. Thwack, thwack, thwack. Leo stopped at the entrance. He was wearing a tight gray tech shirt that showed every muscle in his chest. He watched me for a long time before saying a word. I could see him tracking the sweat on my skin. You hit hard for someone so delicate, Leo said, his voice echoing in a glass room. I didn't stop. I threw a roundhouse kick that made the back groan. I'm not delicate, Leo. I'm just efficient. Most people waste energy on emotions. I put mine into the strike. I stopped then, leaning against the back, my chest heaving. You're late for your workout. I thought you were a high performer. Leo walked toward me, his eyes dark with a hunger he could no longer hide. I got distracted. Meyer wanted to talk about us. Again. Talk is for people who don't know how to act, I said, picking up a bottle of water and pouring some over my neck. I watched his eyes follow the droplets as they disappeared into my top. What did she want? Leo. More promises. More lies. Leo stepped into my personal space. The air between us was thick with the smell of ozone and sweat. She wants the old Leo back. But the old Leo was a lie. He was a guy who was happy with a quiet life. This house. This energy. It's making me realize I want more. I want someone who challenges me. Someone who doesn't need me to hold their hand every time the wind blows. I reached out and placed my hand flat against his chest. I could feel his heart thumping like a trapped bird against his ribs. You're talking about me, aren't you? Leo didn't answer with words. He grabbed my wrist. His grip firm. You knew what you were doing last night in the kitchen. You knew exactly what you were doing. I was getting a drink of water, I whispered, leaning in so close our noses touched. Is it my fault you were watching? Is it my fault you're looking at me right now like you want to break me? I don't want to break you, Jade, he growled, his face inches from mine. I want to see if you're as cold as you pretend to be. I laughed. A soft, dangerous sound. Careful, Leo. If you get too close to the ice, you might just freeze to death. For the next hour, we worked out in a heavy, charged silence. Every time he handed me a weight, our fingers lingered. Every time I stretched, I made sure he had the best view in the room. I was playing him like a finely tuned instrument. I could see the sweat beads on his forehead. I could see the way his muscles tensed when I stood near him. He was losing his grip on his professional persona. He wasn't the traitor anymore. He was just a man, trapped in a room with a woman who represented everything he was not allowed to have. By evening, the house was different. It was heavy. It was humid with the scent of unsaid things. The pregnancy announcement from Meyer earlier that day should have been a celebration. But in this house, it was a funeral for Leo's freedom. I decided to throw a dinner party, a celebration for the happy couple. But the only thing being celebrated was the death of their trust. I had the smart table set with black lace and gold-rimmed china. The lighting was dimmed to a deep, seductive purple, the frequency that triggers a sense of mystery. Meyer looked exhausted. She was wearing a loose floral dress that tried to hide her body, but it only made her look more fragile. I, however, was wearing a backless red silk gown that moved like liquid fire. The tension under the table was electric. While Meyer was explaining her vision for the nursery to the guests, I felt Leo's foot find mine under the table. He didn't pull away. He pressed his shoe against my calf. A silent, desperate communication. "So Leo," I said, raising my wine glass, my eyes locked onto his. "Meyer was just telling us about the move to the suburbs. It sounds so peaceful. Are you ready for the quiet life?" Leo took a long, aggressive gulp of his wine. "I think quiet is a polite word for dead, Jade. But Meyer seems to think it's what's best for the family." "Family is everything," Meyer said, her voice trembling as she looked at Leo. "Isn't it, Leo? We've waited so long for this." "Of course, babe," Leo said, his voice flat. At that moment, I reached under the table. I didn't hide it. I placed my hand on Leo's knee, sliding it upward. I felt his entire body stiffen. He didn't stop me. He sat there talking about the Nasdaq while his landlady's hand was inches from his groin. The thrill of the risk was making him high. He was cheating on his pregnant wife while she sat 3 feet away talking about her love for him. After the guests left, the real work began. I went to the mirror room and activated the auditory gaslight. I played a recording, a very faint, very high-frequency sound of a baby crying. It wasn't loud. It was just at the edge of hearing. Meyer sat up in bed, her eyes wide. "Leo, did you hear that?" Leo walked out of the bathroom, a towel around his waist. "Hear what, Meyer? It's 1:00 a.m. Go to sleep." "A baby." I heard a baby crying. It sounded like it was in the walls. Leo sighed, a sound of pure disgust. "There are no babies in this house, Meyer. You're projecting. You're so obsessed with this pregnancy that you're starting to lose your grip on reality. It's the hormones." He walked out and came down to my office. He didn't say a word. He walked straight to me, grabbed the back of my chair, and leaned over me. "You're making me want to burn my life down," he growled. "I'm not making you do anything," I whispered. "I'm just showing you who you really are." Leo didn't hesitate. He pulled me out of the chair and kissed me, a hard, desperate, angry kiss. It tasted like scotch and betrayal. The morning after the office encounter was silent. A heavy, suffocating silence that felt like the air before a lightning strike. Leo had returned to the penthouse at 4:00 a.m., smelling of my perfume and his own guilt. Meyer hadn't said a word. She sat by the window, her sketchbook open to a blank page, her eyes fixed on the gray Brooklyn skyline. I knew the physical hook wasn't enough. To truly own a man like Leo, you have to own his hero complex. You have to make him believe he is the only person in the world who can fix you. I invited him to the rooftop garden. The city was screaming below us, sirens, horns, the frantic energy of millions of people chasing lies. Up here, it was just the wind and the scent of jasmine. Leo stood by the railing, his back to me. He looked tired, but when he turned around and saw me, his eyes lit up with that dangerous, addictive fire. "I can't stop thinking about last night," he said, his voice rough. "I feel like I'm losing my mind, Jade. I look at Maya, and I feel nothing. I look at you, and I feel like I'm finally awake." I walked to him, my silk shawl fluttering in the breeze. I didn't look sexy today. I looked broken. I made sure my eyes were slightly red, my voice trembling just enough to be believable. "You should stay with her, Leo," I whispered. "I'm not a good person. I'm a ghost. I've lived in this house for so long, surrounded by these walls, that I've forgotten how to be real." Leo stepped closer, his protective instincts kicking in exactly as I'd programmed them. "What happened to you, Jade? Why are you so alone in this massive place?" I let a single tear fall. It was a masterpiece of timing. My husband, the man who built this house, he didn't just want a wife. He wanted a prisoner. He was a giant in the industry. Just like you. Everyone loved him. But in these rooms, he was a monster. He used the very technology I now control to track my every breath. He made me feel like I was insane. He told me the world outside was dangerous, that only he could protect me. I looked up at Leo, my hand trembling as I touched his chest. When he died in that accident, everyone called it a tragedy. But for me, it was just a different kind of silence. I stayed here because I didn't know how to leave. But then you walked in, and for the first time, I wanted to open the windows. Leo grabbed my hands, his face full of a dark, righteous fury. He was a coward. "I would never do that to you, Jade. I want to be the one who takes you out of here." He wasn't just in love with me, he was in love with the version of himself that was saving me. While Leo was on the roof promising to be my savior, I was running the echo protocol in Maya's room. Through the hidden speakers, I piped a distorted, muffled conversation into her bedroom vents. It sounded like Leo and me, laughing about her. In the mirror room, I watched Maya. She didn't cry this time. She stood up, her face a mask of cold, hard stone. She walked to the dresser and picked up her iPad. She remembered the technical glitch email I'd sent her on day one. She began to type. She wasn't looking for baby names anymore. She was looking for the server address. She was looking for the eyes in the walls. That night, the house was a pressure cooker. Leo came to my suite at midnight. He didn't knock. He was done with rules. He was done with Maya. He walked straight to me and pulled me into a kiss that was meant to erase his entire life. "I'm leaving her," he whispered against my lips. "Tonight, I'll tell her it's over. I don't care about the money. I don't care about the kid. I just want this. I want you." I pulled him closer, my eyes fixed on the hidden camera in the ceiling rose. "Watch him, Maya," I thought. "Watch him choose a stranger over your child." But Maya wasn't in her room. The sensor data showed her moving, not toward my suite, not toward the front door. She was moving toward the basement, toward the library. She had found the mirror room. On my monitor, I saw the feed from the library. Maya had found the hidden switch behind the first edition Dickens. She stepped into my command center. She saw the glowing screens. She saw the archives of every couple who had ever stayed here. And then, she saw the main monitor. She saw Leo and me. She saw her husband's hands on my back. She saw the hero whispering sweet nothings into the ear of the woman who had spent the week destroying her mind. Maya didn't scream. She walked up to the main console and saw the admin panel. She saw the deepfake files. She saw the auditory gaslight walks. She realized the baby crying wasn't her mind. She realized the whispers were a program. She looked directly into the camera lens in the mirror room. Her eyes weren't those of a victim anymore. They were the eyes of a woman who had just found the detonator. "My turn," she whispered. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the AC. I looked at Leo, who was still lost in his own fantasy, oblivious to the fact that his golden life was about to be broadcast to the entire world. Inside the mirror room, the air was chilled by the hum of a dozen servers, smelling of ozone and electricity. Maya stood in the center of my sanctuary, her silhouette cast in the blue and red glow of the monitors. For years, I had used these screens to dismantle souls. Now, for the first time, someone was using them to dismantle me. Maya didn't panic. She didn't scream for Leo. She did something far more dangerous. She started learning. She scrolled through the seduction logs. She saw the timestamps of when I had altered the room temperature, when I had triggered the scent of sandalwood in the vents, and when I had played the subaudible frequencies to induce Leo's anxiety. "You're not a person," Maya whispered to the empty room, her eyes fixed on a recording of me and Leo in the gym. "You're a script." She sat in my chair. She pulled up the admin console and found the outgoing data streams. She saw that I had prepared a file on Leo, a collection of his worst moments to use as blackmail later. But Maya had a different plan. She didn't want to own him. She wanted to erase him. She opened the global broadcast link for Leo's firm. She saw the scheduled board meeting for 9:00 a.m. She saw the list of attendees of the CEO, the offshore investors, the partners who called Leo a golden boy. With a few sharp keystrokes, she rerouted the house's internal feed. She didn't just set a trap, she built a stage. Upstairs, in my suite, I felt the shift. The smart lights flickered for a microsecond. The temperature dropped by exactly 2 degrees. I looked at Leo, who was currently tracing the line of my shoulder with his fingers, talking about the new life we would have together. "I'll buy a place in the city," Leo whispered, his voice thick with the arrogance of a man who thinks he's escaped his fate. "Just for us. No sketchbooks. No baby crying. Just power. Just you." I looked into the hidden camera lens in the ceiling rose. I knew Maya was watching. I knew she was hearing every word of his betrayal. I waited for her to burst in. I waited for the drama. But there was only silence. And in this house, silence is the deadliest sound of all. The night dragged on like a slow-bleeding wound. Leo eventually fell asleep in my suite, his arm draped across the silk pillows, a snug smile on his face. He slept the sleep of the wicked peaceful, because he had finally convinced himself that his desires were his rights. I didn't sleep. I walked the hallways of my house, feeling the sensors track my every step. I went to the library, to the hidden door. It was locked, not by me, but from the inside. Maya was still in the mirror room. She had locked me out of my own mind. I sat on the floor outside the door, leaning my head against the cold stone. "You found it," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "The truth isn't what you expected, is it, Maya?" Through the thick stone, I heard her voice. It was calm, too calm. "The truth is that you're pathetic, Jade. You spent your life watching people fail because you're too afraid to ever try. You think you're in control. You're just a ghost haunting a machine." "I saved you," I said, a flash of my old ego surfacing. "If it wasn't for me, you'd spend the next 40 years with a man who would never love you as much as he loves himself." "You didn't save me," Maya replied. "You just traded one monster for another. But tomorrow morning, the house is going to have a new master, and the mirrors are finally going to break." I went back to the penthouse. I stood over Leo as he slept. He looked so small, so replaceable. I realized then that Meyer was right. I had become the very thing I hated. I had become the husband who watched, the husband who controlled, the husband who lied. I looked at the clock, 7:00 a.m. 2 hours until the board meeting. 2 hours until the golden boy became a ghost. I leaned down and whispered into Leo's ear. "Wake up, Leo. It's time to show the world who you really are." Leo stirred, his eyes opening slowly. He reached for me, pulling me back into the bed. "A few more minutes," he murmured. "I don't want to go back to the real world yet." "Don't worry," I said, my eyes fixed on the smart wallpaper that was already starting to pulse with a faint, digital light. "The real world is coming to you." The sun hit the Brooklyn skyline with a clinical, unforgiving light. 8:45 a.m. Inside the penthouse, the air was thick with the smell of expensive coffee and the lingering scent of last night's betrayal. Leo was dressed in his custom-tailored charcoal suit, adjusting his silk tie in the smart mirror. He looked like the king of the world. He had no idea he was looking at a dead man. "Good morning, Jade," Leo said, checking his reflection. "The global board meeting. If I close this hedge today, I'm looking at a 7-figure bonus. Enough to buy us that place in the Maldives I was telling you about." I sat on the edge of the bed, watching him. "You're very confident, Leo. Most men would be shaking if they were about to throw away a decade of marriage for a feeling." Leo laughed, a sharp, arrogant sound. "Most men aren't me, Meyer. She's a anchor. You're the wind. I'm just cutting the rope." 8:58 a.m. Leo opened his laptop on the mahogany desk. The screen glowed with the faces of the world's most powerful traders. The CEO of his firm, a man who valued family values as much as profit margins, was already presiding. "Morning, everyone," the CEO's voice crackled through the high-end speakers. "Before we get to the numbers, Leo, I believe you had a special presentation on the ethics of the modern market." Leo smirked at me. "I do, sir. It's all about knowing when to cut your losses." 9:00 a.m. Leo hit the share screen button, but he didn't see his PowerPoint. Instead, the wall-size smart wallpaper behind him flickered and transformed into a giant, high-definition broadcast of the mirror room logs. The entire global board, hundreds of people saw Leo in the gym, whispering how Meyer was dead weight. They saw him in the kitchen, his hand on my waist, calling his pregnant wife a liability. And then, the ultimate blow, they saw the footage from last night in my suite, where Leo admitted he wanted to use psychological instability to commit Meyer to a clinic just to get his hands on the trust fund. The silence on the call was deafening. Then the chat window exploded. "Is that Leo? Did he just say he's committing his wife? Get security on the line." Leo's face went from tan to a ghostly, sickly gray. He hit the keys on his laptop, frantically trying to kill the feed, but the house didn't obey him. Meyer had locked the admin rights. What is this?" Leo stammered, his voice cracking into a high-pitched whine. "Sir, this is a deepfake. This is a hack. It's not real." "It's as real as the child she's carrying, Leo," I said, standing up and walking slowly toward him. "The board isn't looking at a trader anymore. They're looking at a monster." The CEO's face on the screen was a mask of pure disgust. "Leo Richardson, you are fired. Effective immediately. Our legal team will be in touch regarding the fraud you've committed against your family's estate. Don't bother coming to the office. Your badge has already been deactivated." The screen went black. Leo stood there, his billion-dollar life reduced to a pile of digital ash in 60 seconds. The door to the suite slid open. Meyer stood there. She wasn't the watercolor girl anymore. She was wearing a trench coat, her suitcase by her side. She looked at Leo on the floor. He had collapsed into the velvet chair, his head in his hands, sobbing like a child. She didn't yell. She didn't hit him. She just looked at him with the cold, hard clarity of someone who had finally woken up from a nightmare. "The car is downstairs," Leo Myers said. "For me, not for you. My lawyers have the full logs. Every whisper, every touch, every lie you told in this house is now part of the public record. You wanted to be a legend. Well, now you're a cautionary tale." She looked at me then. A long, silent look that felt like a bridge being burned. "You thought you were the architect, Jade, but you were just another prisoner. You spent 20 years watching other people's lives because you were too afraid to have one of your own." Meyer walked out. She left the house, the city, and the man she once loved. She was going to build a life where the mirrors didn't have eyes. Voiceover quiet and reflective. I stayed in that room for a long time after they left. I looked at the monitors. I saw the empty penthouse. I saw the cold, hard technology. And for the first time in 2 decades, I felt the weight of my own cage. Meyer was right. I had become the monster I was hiding from. I had become the husband who watched, the husband who controlled. I went down to the mirror room. I looked at the main server rack, the brain of the house. I thought about all the secrets I held, all the power. And then I remembered the smell of the jasmine on the roof and the sound of Meyer's pencil on her sketchbook. I didn't use a program. I walked over to the power supply and pulled the master cable. The screens died. The humming stopped. The house was finally, mercifully, silent. Sound of birds chirping and a soft, uplifting piano melody. I didn't solve a brownstone. I transformed it. I invited a team of real architects, the kind who build with light and hope. We tore down the one-way glass. We ripped out the hidden microphones. We turned the mirror room into a communal kitchen. Today, the building is called the Meyer Sanctuary. It's a home for women who need to disappear for a while. Women who are fleeing men like Leo. Women who have been told they are unstable when they were actually just being hunted. I still live on the top floor, but the doors are never locked. I sit in the garden now, wearing an old sweater, holding a cup of tea. I don't watch them on screens. I sit with them at the table. I listen to their stories, and I tell them mine. I heard from Meyer a few weeks ago. She sent me a photo of her daughter. She named her Am Peace. The photo wasn't taken with a hidden lens. It was a selfie, bright and blurry and full of life. My name is Jade. I used to be a predator. I used to be a ghost. But today, for the first time in 20 years, the house is finally full of light.